We as an American people value education. It's a key to the American dream. Our next guest is worried about the radical left's attempts to influence K-12 education in a way that will cause problems and hurt people's access to the American dream. Katie Gorka is Director for Civil Society at the Heritage Foundation, and you've been looking very closely at this, what the left is doing in education. What should we be watching for?
Well, I think, number one, we should be watching for racism. And now that might sound surprising, but what we're seeing is it's a kind of reverse racism. We are seeing white people, what they call the privileged class, and that actually includes Asians now. It includes Jews. Those are all considered to be part of the privileged class. And they are being called out, singled out for their supposed privilege and being asked to somehow apologize for who they are. This is not the way to achieve racial harmony in this country. This is not the way to address injustices or vestiges of racism that exist, that remain in this country.
Some people may have seen stories on the news, read something in the paper, and think, oh, well, this is an isolated incident. But it sounds as if this type of thinking has really permeated not just the colleges where you might expect it, but also now into our K-12 public education.
Indeed. I mean, in North Carolina, the new civics and the new social studies and history standards actually talk about this and bring in critical race theory, which is, fundamentally Marxist. It's fundamentally anti-American. What makes this country so special is the fact that our founders created a system where each person would be treated equally by the law. They by no means did they achieve that from the beginning. And it has taken us a long time. And I would say we're still not there, right? But we are getting ever closer to their ideal. And what the left is trying to do right now is to really take us off track from that. They are going to take us back to another time, another place where it's really a new kind of despotism, where the law is applied discriminately depending on if you're in the privileged class or not. And it's really unfortunate. I think what the left is doing, as well-intentioned as it might be, they are creating greater division in our country, and they are threatening to undermine the very foundations on which this great country was built.
To some extent, this may be seen as a new problem here in the United States and more close at home in North Carolina. Much of your career was spent dealing with the impact of communism in Eastern Europe. Are there parallels to what you saw and the impact of that type of thinking in the Eastern European countries, and Hungary in particular, and the types of things that Americans are dealing with now?
Absolutely. So that's right. I lived for 12 years in Hungary, and I worked for 18 years altogether in former communist countries. I really got to experience firsthand how communism just hollows out the soul of a country and of a people. The problem today with the whole conversation about identity politics and group rights is that people are ignoring history. They're not looking at what happens when you start to talk about group rights. People think, we'll never go the direction that the Soviet Union went. No, I disagree. History tells us we will go that direction. Unless you have the rule of law and the principle that all individuals are created equal, you are going to get into a system like the Soviet Union had, like the Eastern European countries had, where you have a very kind of corrupt oligarchy at the top, taking all the privileges for themselves and leaving the crumbs for the people. It's inevitable, and it's just so upsetting to me that we don't teach history anymore because we are not going to learn those lessons.
Some people may hear what you just said and say, well, aren't we already on that road now with the people who live in Washington and New York and some of the major left coast cities, and they're in a position where they take all the riches, and folks who have been relying for decades and centuries on the American dream are having a harder road now than they used to?
I have to agree with you. I think it's really true. It's sad but true. I think that the things that really stand out for me as the most upsetting is I feel like when it comes to our elites, our justice system is not working. Like somehow it doesn't apply to them. And so I think a lot of people feel that the justice system is rigged. If we don't have faith in the rule of law, we are going to be in big trouble. And then I think the other is, and this is sort of a different form of corruption, but I mean the loss of sort of acknowledgement for how important freedom of speech is to this country and how important freedom of speech is to every single individual American. That too is really alarming. I think that, I don't know what the long-term solution is, but the power that seems to be in the hands of the tech companies to silence some voices and elevate others should be alarming for all of us.
Well, I have asked you to sort of stir the pot and get people excited about how bad the situation is. Now that we've done that, what should we do? I mean, we can't just sit back and say, oh, this is terrible. What should we do about it?
Well, this is a great opportunity. Look, I think we are all waking up to the fact that the United States is a self-governing republic. That's an extraordinary thing. That means every single one of us has a role to play. I think the days of sitting back and just living our own private lives, trusting that the public schools or the schools will take care of our children and teach them the right thing, those days are over. I think parents need to really engage. I think to some extent many of them already are. Parents need to be paying close attention to what's being taught to their children. Those things have consequences. And I would say the same thing for the culture. What your children watch on television or what you watch in the movies, it has a very big impact on our formation as people. And if we want to maintain this country and maintain the freedoms that we have to pay attention to the culture that we're taking in and the education that our children are receiving.
One person who's going to be watching all of these developments very closely as they move forward is Katie Gorka. She is Director for Civil Society at the Heritage Foundation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.